Hello and welcome to Transformations Café, where we're serving light as bold as love. I'm your host, Ken Marks, and Transformations Café is brought to you by the Institute for Global Transformation, or IFGT. We invite you to visit us on the web at theglobaltransformation.org. You'll find many resources and more information about the Institute. And if you'd like to join our global community of change makers, there's a join button at the top of each page. And if you want to support us, including programs like this one, there's also a donate button at the top of each page. Today's program actually represents something of a homecoming for our special guest. Henry Shelton is not only a member of IFGT's board of directors and a longtime volunteer, but it was his creative genius that first launched a live monthly interview format program for IFGT. It was then called Meet the Author, and Henry interviewed a number of very compelling authors. Sadly, we learned recently that one of the first interviews that Henry, you interviewed twice, and I was able to also interview him subsequently. Dr. Urban Laszlo has transitioned, but those were very key initial interviews that helped anchor this program. So it's now nice to have you back as our guest, very special guest. I'm honored to receive the hosting baton from you, and it's nice to now be able to circle back. We're going to focus today's conversation on Henry's new book. The book is titled The Fire Within: Burnout, Breakthrough, and the Soul's Next Chapter. I had the pleasure of both reading the book and speaking with Henry in some detail about it the other day. And the book aligns beautifully with IFGT's vision and mission to raise humanity's consciousness and helping share the ageless wisdom. And it also provides great examples, which we've been exploring more recently on this program in particular, ways that we can integrate our spiritual lives, if you will, with our day-to-day lives. Often those can be compartmentalized, and I've taken a particular interest in making it all one life. And Henry's work and this book are great examples of how we can kind of blur those lines and better integrate those aspects of our one life. So I'm going to do just a brief bio review. So those of you who are not familiar with Henry Shelton will get to know him a little bit better, and then we'll get into our conversation. Henry Shelton is an executive coach, speaker, author, and transformational leader dedicated to working with individuals to align their lives and careers with deeper purpose and authenticity. He is the founder of Assure Coaching and works with professionals seeking to move beyond burnout and rediscover their inner gifts, clarity, and calling. Drawing from backgrounds in leadership, entrepreneurship, and spiritual development, Henry integrates practical coaching with our archetypal and transformational approaches to personal growth. So with that, Henry, welcome back. Welcome to Transformations Cafe. Good to see you.
Thank you, Ken. Good to be back.
Yeah, so let's get into the fire, man. Let's give you and our audience a chance to hear you. Maybe talk to us about why you wrote the book and who's it for.
Sure. Well, the why part to why I wrote the book goes way back to some of my earlier days in training. I used to do computer training, had a computer training center, and that parlayed into two things. One, a technical training contract with the state of Texas, and also with a Fortune 500 company here, where I trained probably over 900 people on the early days of the internet. With the state of Texas, I worked with somewhere around 700 up and coming emerging entrepreneurs who wanted to do business with the state of Texas. My company had landed a contract, and we were delivering services. And they were impressed with, I guess, some of the things we were doing. So they asked if we could share what we were doing with some other entrepreneurs that were struggling. So that, and then I became an adjunct professor here in the DFW area, where I was teaching two things: the early startup, the early onboarding for IT, and then turning that into an entrepreneurial endeavor. So uh, I'm about 30 years into being my own, having my own company, working for myself. And so when I was doing the work with the state of Texas, one of the things that occurred was, I mean, I was loving the contract was lucrative. I was loving pretty much the interaction with the clients, but one of the things I was missing, Ken, and you alluded to it earlier, is kind of what I've always looked for in businesses, and is the soul of the business. It was lacking in a lot of the clients we were talking with, and I wanted a way to awaken that. And as you mentioned in the intro, I've been studying ancient wisdom metaphysics for over 30 years. So I began to sprinkle a little ancient wisdom into some of my presentations, and people began to resonate with it. I remember the first client in my kind of a purely technical class, because my role was helping people to write their business plan, helping them to write their marketing plan, create the mission and vision for their company, and all that was good. But I wanted to connect it with their heart, and I call it heart-centered businesses. So I remember my first client. She had inherited a light company from her father, where she installed lights, commercial lights, and some things I was saying, she said resonated with her. Long story short, she told me, she said, I'm making a lot of money, but I'm just not happy anymore. So we worked together, and long story short, she sold her light company. She started a bed and breakfast, and so that was my first client with this new model, Ken. So that's how I wrote the book to ultimately put that message out there, uh, to help an individual understand how they could connect their heart center, uh, that which they're passionate about, and ultimately their own inner gifts with their work, with their entrepreneurial endeavors. So that's why I wrote the book.
And we can get into some of the audiences that you had in mind too, because some things came out in our conversation the other day that I think would be good if we share with folks in terms of the broader appeal that this can certainly have, and the different forms that burnout can. But your work has had some themes. You've been coaching for many years. You've been looking at other uh, lines of business.
Yeah, so I guess many on here may be familiar with Stephen Covey's work, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. So, years ago, I read that, and I pretty much governed my life and business by that. And then he wrote his second book, which was The Eighth Habit. And in The Eighth Habit, Covey said, now it's time to move from being highly effective. It's time to move to greatness. And he said the way you do that, for those that were ready, is to discover your voice and then help find your voice and help others to find theirs. And that really resonated with me. And of course, I've always been in the mindset of personal growth and helping others through uh, personal and spiritual growth. So that was a mantra for me, finding my voice and helping others to find theirs. Because coming out of the technical world, it was a challenge, studying metaphysics, studying ancient wisdom, merging that with just the pure technical. So, yeah, that's kind of my philosophy on the highest human potential. It's a way. This work is about connecting you with your soul's yearning. even if you're not aware of it. And that's how and why I developed the instrument, the assessment instrument, to help you get in touch with that soul's yearning by having a dialogue, a self dialogue with yourself. So that's the whole thing with highest human potential. Now you mentioned uh, my intent was to do this for individuals who were starting enterprises, but you alluded to something, and I talk about it in the book. I can't remember the page, but I tell you, for those that are not thinking about starting a business, going through this process will unlock what that essence is, that fire within you that drives you, that you're passionate about. And you don't necessarily have to take that and start a business. You could take it and begin to volunteer with organizations that resonates with what your newfound passion is, your aha moment, or you can, um, you could just, or you could start a nonprofit organization, uh, or you can just basically start to live your life from there. So it doesn't have to be a business per se, but the crux of my work and the bulk of my work and clients are individuals that are looking to start pivot from the corporate world and start a business.
We did talk about this the other day, just to sort of dig a little deeper into what you were just saying. Um, I read it, to use myself as an example, as someone who's at least finished with their first career, but not done hungering for a purpose and meaning in life, as I think is pretty natural human characteristic. And I found the exercises in the book to be compelling, to help me get in touch with things. One of the things that you do in the book is share some of your own revelations and going back to your childhood, which is part of the technique I think that you use in this book and your work with individuals to really go back and find those things that have always been part of you that sometimes can get masked over through the course of life. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's a very fair statement. Mostly, that's in the. I included that in the books when I'm working with individuals outside of that. Uh, we start with the assessment, but the reason I put those exercises in the book because, as I mentioned to you, I wanted to offer a path to an individual discovering who they were at the lowest cost that's feasible. So I figured $20, anyone could afford that if they were looking at improving themselves. And rather than have to rely on taking an assessment, you could go through the exercises and still uh, come up with some framework of a new way to pivot, a new way to live your life. So yeah, that's why I included the exercises in there.
So I think we need to make sure that our audiences understand. You've mentioned the assessment twice, so let's back up, broaden out a little bit, and explain what the assessment is that you're referring to, and how that relates to the book.
Yeah, sure. So the assessment is the an instrument I created. I worked with. I told you. Well, I didn't work with. I interviewed about 9 industrial psychologists. The goal and intent was to come up with a way. Intuitively, I had to go through a process to figure out who I was beyond the IT world. But that was an intuitive process, much studying, much deep meditation. But I wanted a way to be able to share this. So early days, I came up with this thing called 2020 Vision, where I had 20 questions I would ask a person during our initial interview, and a lot of people responded very deeply to those questions. And well, actually, I didn't have them written down. One of the first there was an individual in the first group that says, you should turn this into a formalized set of questions. So I did, and then I expanded on it to expanded to an assessment, and it's a self-report type assessment that uh, allows you to have a conversation with yourself. You answer a series of questions, and based on your interaction with those questions, it gives you a report based on some of the what I call the not they're not questions, they're items, because some of them are statements, but you're having a conversation with your inner self. And the industrial psychologist helped me to formulate it in a way where the the highest questions that resonated with you would ultimately create a profile. And many of you have done things like the Myers-Briggs. What is the other one? Strength Finders. So when I first took well, I took Myers-Briggs first, a long time ago. Same thing with Strength Finders, and I was always excited, and encouraged by that, but I wanted to create my own flavor of that, my own brand. So this is what our assessment. So the assessment is the starting point in working with me. That's the baseline, and from there, once we get a profile of who you are at the core, then we have a dialogue, and we fashion that into what I call an aha moment. We draw out from you those elements that resonates most with you. And then we talk about how can you apply those uh, based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do you have a preference to work at the physical level where you're helping people meet their physical needs? Do you have a preference of working at the safety and security level? Or the what's the next level up? The love and belonging level, the self-esteem, self-actualization. Then I added two more, and that's aesthetics and transcendence. So where do you have where does one have a desire uh, to reach people, to work with people, to serve? And then lastly, what industry? And so, and I picked 12 sectors, and an individual ultimately, all this is built into the assessment. Like I said, by this self-report items and questions, it gives you a report back, and based on how the thing is written, because ultimately you come up with your three highest gifts that you resonate with, and those are derived from the three dominant archetypes or ascendant archetype. So when you do the math, and it's your profile is 1 in 10 million. So that's how many possible um, uh, that's how many possible combinations there are. So 1 in 10 million. That tells you that's who you are, and that's a good starting point to start on, because that ultimately and eventually that's who you are, and that would build your confidence, and you can build on that.
So I want to clarify some things for our audience, and then I want to kind of weave back into some more of the wisdom and maybe some more metaphysical things. The especially we'll talk about Egypt a bit too, and its influence in your life. But just so folks are familiar, so we're talking about a book. You're talking about an assessment, talking about working with you. Do do those have to go hand in hand, or can people simply use the book?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I wanted a person to be able to, if if the book is their price point as far as an investment into their personal growth, you can, and if you have the time, and if you're a student enough, you could use the book. And I say a student enough, it's pretty simplified. You read it, Ken. The exercises are pretty straightforward. So you can take the book itself, because one of the things I did is all of the potential possibilities of the archetypes, as well as the individual gift list. All of them are in the book, and Now, at that point, you're intuiting which one resonates most with you. But if you're an intuitive person, then you could go through and say, hey, that resonates more with me. So yeah, you could take that, and I even have the outline for my program, so you can walk through the 7-step process. So again, if a person's um, patient enough and enterprising enough, you could put together your own program and pivot just using a book alone.
And if, on the other hand, they're inspired enough after reading the book, you've got several opportunities to either just take the assessment and have that evaluation, and then you are accepting new clients still as a coach.
I am definitely accepting new clients, yes. But let me back up a little bit. So when I first did the Strength Finder assessment myself years ago, uh, I think his name was Buckingham. Started out doing. I can't remember the guy that eventually took it over, but it was the same thing. You read the book, and if you could kind of intuit from the book what your strengths are. But at the time, I wanted to nail mine. I wanted to get mine, dial mine in. And so that's the same opportunity I wanted to offer with the assessment. Rather than having to guess at it, you take the assessment and it'll dial it in to what specifically. And then after a conversation, a series of conversations, you know, your aha moment would emerge. Uh, so yeah, and that's the starting point, Ken. And then from there, we could you have an option. You have options. You could take the online course, which is uh, I'm not involved at that in terms of coaching, except for if you want to send me emails. And then there's the one-on-one coaching, and then we're starting in August. We're moving toward a group coaching format as well. So.
Right. You had mentioned that there's a desire to start building your own community around this work too. So that
Yeah,
sounds like
well,
a
so ultimately, that's the end goal is to build an ecosystems of individuals who are, working from their heart center to make an impact in the world. So my my desire is to be able to do business with individuals and enterprises who are one, good at what they do, great at what they do, offer genuine value, and you know is honest, ethical, and moral in what they do, and you can feel good about going back a second, third time and referring other people. So the goal is to build an ecosystem of individuals that people can come to and say, I wanted, I know that if we do business in this ecosystem, right now the group is called Souls. The group is Souls Cold Venture, but the brand will be Akamora. I know if I go to this platform, I can find someone to do business with that's going to be great at what they do and ethical. And I use the term genuine, significant value. And I'm going to give a very quick, I guess, analogy of what I mean. Um, I don't know if everybody has Outback Steakhouse, but there's a dessert at Outback Steakhouse that I used to get all the time, Ken, on my birthday, our shared birthday. But so this brownie, Chocolate Thunder from Down Under, was the name of the brownie, and
hmm.
I love that brownie. I love that dessert. And one day I went in to order the dessert, and I was bragging about it, and it didn't taste the same. And I'm like, something's going on with this brown, and something's going on with this dessert. It's changed. And I stopped the server and asked, I say, what's different about this dessert? It's not the same. She said, I don't know, I'm new here. So I said, did they change the recipe? She said, oh, we started ordering the brownie from some other company. We used to make them.
Interesting.
And so
Yeah.
that's one restaurant, and I can go on with other restaurants. So, and I don't know if I'm the only one on here who noticed, but over time, what I have discern is some of these food places that we grew up with, the quality of the food has changed. So genuine, significant value. In other words, if you are a mechanic, I want you to provide genuine significant value uh, and no hype and like I said, bait and switch. If you're an instructor, if you're an accountant, whatever you do, I just want the value to the clients, the sacred patrons, as I call them in my book, to be palpable, and that's the key. The service should be palpable. It should be felt. It's just not a transaction. So that's what I strive for in my work, and that's what I would like to see, uh, in my ecosystem and ultimately in the world. It's a
So let's
tall order,
we
but
let's let I want to come back to that, but I also we've used the term a couple of times, and I don't want to assume that everybody here live with us or those that will see this in its recorded form know what the term archetype means or how you're using it. So can you give us a bit of a definition and maybe some examples? And because that seems to be kind of the at least one of the backbones of the assessment and the way the the roadway that you provide to help people find what their true divine gifts are.
so I'm going to give the definition for archetype, and then I'm going to tell you how I arrived at the seven primary archetypes that I work with. So archetype comes from a combination of the Greek word arche, which means first, foremost, sort of highest in rank, and typos, which basically means a copy of or an essence of. So collectively, archetype means a copy of the original, the primordial essence of a thing. And so this started when I did my first trip to Egypt. Uh, and I won't go deep into that, but I was sort of mesmerized by all of the carvings in Egypt, all of the what they call hieroglyphs, which I know now the true name is Medu Neter. But I was trying to figure out what all these things were for, and why would someone go through all of the painstaking artisan-like detail to plaster these across all of the temples and pyramids in Egypt. And what was the point? Well, I learned what the point was. The point was this to basically what I said. Etch into posterity the symbols of the divine language, the divine essence, the aspects and functions and qualities of nature were all symbolized through these symbols or these carvings called neteru, or what excuse me, metaneter, what the Greeks then call hieroglyphs. Well, when I first started to coach, and when I began to transition and put my program together, the ancient Greek, excuse me, the ancient Egyptian mindset was was just a little bit too esoteric for most people to grasp and access. Young, so Young went
Yeah.
to Egypt. Young went to Egypt, and he pretty much walked away and said, what he called the collective unconscious can they manifest through all of the cultures and all of the ages in the form of what we call archetypes. And he talks about the basic archetypes that he used in his work. So I decided to use the concept of the archetype because I knew everybody could relate to a sage, everybody could relate to a warrior, everybody could relate to a magician, everybody could relate to um, an artisan. So
So
what I did,
these I'm sorry, Henry, but so sage, warrior, etc. Those are examples of these archetypes.
yes, I mean there's a long list of archetypes, but those are just what I named as probably a few. And like I said, I selected seven primary archetypes, and in the book, I have a list in the back of probably like I call them my activation archetypes. Um, I think there is a list of about like 49. Or if it's not in the book, it's definitely part of the extended assessment. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Traditional, ancient, or primordial archetypes. And so, how did I come up with the list of primary seven, and what does that mean to individuals? I wanted to find a way to substantiate my claims that if you uh, if you identify with some of these primordial essences, these functions, these qualities in nature, then you could be pretty much assured that you're aligning yourself with nature itself. So, and I talk about this guy in the book. One of my resources that I used to study this was a book called The Theory of Celestial Influences. And I'm gonna give you the short version. There are coming from the IT world and the engineering world. I'm all about processes because those that know, whether you're a project manager or engineer, if you follow a process with anything and it's grounded in certain principles, it's gonna work out. Case in point, when I first planted my first garden, my grandfather taught me if I planted things a certain way on a certain time period, water it, did the right processes of gardening, that plant would always come up. And as a young kid, it when it did that, I was always excited. So then this carried on to my engineering work. But back to the archetypes, I wanted to ground the archetypes I work with in some fundamental processes in nature. And so I found six processes that someone else had done some painstaking work to articulate. And if you want to look at the book, The Theory of Celestial Influence, Rodney Collins, he does a major treatise on how these six processes that he have is grounded in nature. And so I took those six processes and assigned archetypes to them, the one that most resonated with those processes in nature. And this he said that there's only six, and no more than six, and everything that we know of in the known physical world adheres to one of those six processes. uh and I'll give you kind of briefly what, like, the process of growth, the process of incarnation, the process of propagation, of the process of multiplication. That falls under the that's the first process. And what I missed is he said that they're made they're derived that from the sun, the planets, and the earth, and elements of the earth, like the minerals of the earth. And that's a whole long conversation. But uh, so again, if you want to dive deep, you could go get the book. But I'm saying that I grounded these archetypes in processes of nature that are have been scientifically studied. And um, so we go beyond just theory and symbolism. We're grounding it now in aspects of nature. And so the last process I put in was the process of visioning, and I attached that to the seer archetype. So it talks about that, and I elaborate more on that in let's see, in the appendix of the book. And also, once you take the assessment, you can download the there is a free ebook you can download that dives deep into what I'm talking about. So Ken, that's a definition of our archetype. I gave you a few examples. Again, these so-called archetypes they're what aligns us with nature and the what Jung call our collective unconsciousness. So we can be assured that we're operating in harmony with nature and the collective unconscious if we find ourselves through one of these archetypes, or what
So,
I choose three. But go ahead.
so my understanding from having read the book, from our conversation the other day, this all unfolds in a very logical pattern where the goal is to help each of us that come to know you and your work really discover what our inner essence is, our true self. And there are tools like this assessment, and the archetype helps us to kind of peel away the layers that get put on through life and society, our conditioning, programming, just to find that true essence. And then you draw some connections between the the three primary archetypes, I think is what you get to, that each of us kind of has in our lives, and where those talents and gifts that are represented by these archetypes and the characteristics of the archetypes and how they might best then translate into the work and purpose that is our most definitive, I guess, or the work that is our true purpose, our soul's purpose. Is that
Correct.
am I on
And
I'm on track?
you're spot on. Let me just add to that, and the reason for that, Ken, the reason for the grounding is that one of the things I found out way back when I started the training and the coaching is that people lack confidence in themselves to pivot and to start something new. So grounding this into, as you call, the true soul self or the true nature of yourself, one could, again, this is grounded in science and nature. So one could be even if you weren't sure of yourself, you can study the processes in nature and see how they always played out and they always yielded positive results. So with that along as a starting basis, you can draw some confidence for that, and you can build on your confidence. And once you connect with that core self, um, you're operating from your authentic self. Uh, Things tend to go smoother. Uh, you move with ease. You're not struggling. You're not more importantly, you're not getting bored because it's who you are and it's what you live to do. It's almost like if a rose was doing this work, and if a rose says, my archetype is roseness, and I admit the essence of a rose, that's what a rose does all day long, right? A rose is not going to try to be a pineapple. It's not going to try to be a cactus, although it has some elements of cactus in its ecosystem, but it does roseness the best. So once we find a giraffe does giraffeness the best, and I can go on and on. An elephant does elephant the best. So we humans have to do the same thing. We have to do what nature knows and express from who we truly are. And that's this tool, this assessment, the books, and my work is all about helping an individual find who you are, then build it.
And then there's something even beyond that, which we want to make sure you have a chance to expand on as well, because it doesn't just stop with coming to know thyself through this process and these tools, and then realizing through what you do or say or whatever, however this gets expressed, the ultimate, it seems, kind of the crescendo is that it's in service.
Yes, definitely. Service is the keynote to all of this, and that changes the narrative if a person's working in service as opposed to working to pay the bills, which I know we have to do, uh, are working for some other transactional purpose, saying that I'm providing service as my keynote to humanity. That changes everything, and particularly when you add in the part in there about making your clients your sacred patrons, then you come to find that you have a divine assignment with that individual or those individuals. And the language is different. I know it's different in business. I know I've resigned to and resolved that. But from that, I'm gonna work with the language. But for me, given the state of the world, I don't have an issue with having to come up with a new language to define how we do business in a different way, and we interact and serve each other in a different ways. So.
This is one of the fundamental cornerstones of the initial and ongoing vision of IFGT to integrate all of this into our every aspect of day-to-day life. So it isn't just I overuse the term we take it off the cushion. Your med time for your meditation practice, if that's part of your life, doesn't begin and end just on the cushion. The whole idea is to make your entire life be a part of what comes from the meditation practice. And I think that's where this goes and why it lends to go to service, not as I didn't get any flavor that it's a burden. And you said that a couple moments ago, and you make the point in the book. This is things get easier when you find your true calling. Your service comes naturally. But you use a term I hadn't heard before. Talk to us a little bit about the sacred patron.
So, yeah, so I'm gonna talk about the sacred patron, but let me sidebar is I remember. So this is how I connected with the Institute for Global Transformation. I remember when I first started talking about archetypes. Uh, dear Marianne reached out to me and said, "Hey, what you're posting? This is on LinkedIn, Marianne. You may remember it. You say this is resonating with me. I'd like to have a conversation with you." So that's how I got involved with the Institute for Global Transformation because our work, the language aligned.
And
Um,
you're referring to Marianne Miller, who's with us in our live audience today, and she's the founder and president of IF.
so sacred patrons, again, this goes way back for me when I first started into business, my own business. Actually, it goes back to when I was in the biomed world. I'll never forget. I had installed a system at a hospital here in Dallas. Uh, this was a CAT scan system, and I just never forget. I was in the room making sure the radiologist could use it, making sure everything was working good. And what they had this elderly lady on the table, and they were scanning her whole body. And I turned and asked the doctor. I'm like, and I got in on good terms with the doctor. I'm like, Doctor Richardson, I can call his name. He's not around. Uh, why are you guys scanning this her whole body? Because the report says she was having some issues. I can't remember when she was having issues. That guy looked at me and did this. He said,
Wow.
and
Wow.
that just floored me. And and so I mean, I ran into other stories like that. People just uh, particularly when they found out you got insurance, and that's what he was saying. She's got good insurance. That's exactly what he said. She's got good
Yeah, that
insurance.
just for those who may just listen to the audio, this Henry is making the gesture of they did it because it made more money.
Correct. Yeah, rubbing your fingers together to get the money. So I began to run into this a lot when I became members of various chambers of commerces, and it would irk me. I remember. So what I wanted to do is move away from just doing business for transactional purposes, doing business, and that's what a lot of people are getting caught up in right now. People calling it securing the bag. So when you're quote unquote securing the bag, and you know, now analogous to a bag of money, when you're out to do that, you tend to do anything to quote secure the bag if you're in business, and that really bothers me. So I wanted to again introduce new terms. So I wanted people to not look at individuals as clients, meaning a way to get money. To As some of them used to tell me when I would ask, so what are you going in business for? I want to, what are you trying to grow your business for? I want to buy a larger house. I want to buy a better car. On and I want to travel more. And all those things are great. And, I think they're great motivations. But at the end of the day, when you start compromising the quality for the dollar, then you look at humans as, uh, I want to say customers and clients, but really, you it's really it's devolved a little bit more. So enter the new
So,
term,
so,
sacred.
so it bothers you if people feel okay about giving a less quality dessert.
Absolutely, it bothers me. You just see me as a means to get a dollar. You're not thinking about the quality that used to be in that dessert that brought me back there. So a sacred patron is someone that they you recognize that they're experiencing something that you have the ability to solve. And
Yeah.
again, I said this a minute ago, I'm gonna say it again. It's not about the transactional dollar. You have a sacred, a divine assignment with them. And when you get into the mindset that you have a divine assignment with someone, I don't care what religion you're from, that changes the mindset. You know, even if one doesn't subscribe to karma, we you subscribe to reap and sow. So the whole sacred patron thing is to get you in the mindset is that I'm working with someone that I have a destiny with. Uh, I want to see and hope to see this person beyond this first transaction.
Well, what's struck me, and I love this, and I got to give credit to the person I studied a form of the ageless wisdom with, who's also been a guest several times on this program, Georgia Lambert. She says the wisdom is the wisdom, and you'll find it in many forms. It is found throughout the your work and your book, Henry. And this part of finding our true nature, our true self, finding what it is that we are here to do. It is here and given to us in part, according to the wisdom, to then find those, as in your vocabulary, those sacred patrons who are going to be most helped and affected by those unique things that we bring. And part of the process that you guide people through and part of the work of finding these things out and then engaging those gifts and strengths and talents is entirely to then find those direct sacred patrons that your particular significant value is associated with and is there for. And so it is very much part of the wisdom, and it's part of what struck me as here it is, couldn't be more plain than to see things that we can talk about in very esoteric terms if people wish to, and yet it is very much part of the day to day, and it is also a way of shaping the world and the realities that we want them to be. And your work is a part of that energy that is helping us shift away from uh, a less love-based way of interacting. And at the same time, you're not saying you're not allowed to make money. You're not saying you're not allowed to grow a successful business. That is not contradictory to something that is also very spiritual.
Absolutely no. So I mean, the law of compensation handles that to the degree that you serve, and as many as you can serve. Again, if wherever one draws their spiritual basis from, either reaper sower or esoteric karma, to the degree that you positively put out, that's going to come back tenfold. Um, so yeah, and the whole thing about the making money part is we want individuals to be wildly successful materially so that they can do more of the good work that they're doing. So that's so again, and you get to the point where eh, I want to substitute the word service for work because again, and this is where I draw my analogy. Uh, there used to be this little short phrase, and again, I'm you drawing from the Christian vernacular. What would Jesus do? I always say, what would God do? Or what would divinity do if divinity was here on earth? And so we have to be the hands and feet and eyes of divinity. We have to be the hands and feet of God. So what would God do if God was here providing health care, or providing legal services, or providing financial service, or providing a chocolate thunder from down under? Probably tell me not to eat that, but so but we have to treat individuals sacred patrons, and we have to deliver, Alexandra, as you posted in the comments, genuine significant value at that level. And I tell you, we have a ways to go to get back there. I think there was a time we did, but we have a ways, in my opinion, to get back there. But that's
Yeah,
I'm
but
here for it. That's what my work.
right. I mean, that's what is so encouraging is that someone has to help to, build the road and, clear the path. So thank you for, being part of the pioneering and bringing it into this day and age, which there's a lot of headwinds. I mean, right now, if people wanted to and they were to rely on maybe more traditional leadership labels and roles, some of those we see now seem to be encouraging the opposite of what you're talking about. So I think it's bold, but it's also, it because you've lived it and it comes from your heart center that this is the right thing to do. And once it's there, it doesn't seem like it's difficult and those headwinds don't blow you off course. So it's inspiring.
Yeah,
There's a couple other things we talked about the other day, Henry, that I want to make sure we share with others. Um, and I'll let you decide how much you want to get into the nature of burnout. But one thing that struck me when I read this is that we can traditionally think of burnout as associated with just a job or career. And that's something that there's nothing wrong with that. But burnout comes in many other forms and it can come in different parts of life. And you can see forms of burnout in much younger people, in teens and adolescents, or young adults that are just drifting and they're kind of burned out on the what can feel overwhelming in life. um, Seniors can be burned out on just, trying to find purpose again in their life after maybe so many things that defined them before are gone. And then there's also a form of burnout that can come from the wounding parts of life, is the word that came to me earlier today, especially deep loss and grief. That can burn out your desire to go on and being able to get back in touch with these ideas of who you are now and how do you come about redefining and finding a purpose and eventually getting back to service. So I'm making the point in part because I would not like people to come away either just glancing at this or reading the title and thinking, oh, it's just about job and career burnout. This applies to every form of burnout I could imagine.
Yeah, it does. Again, the in the 7-step process, what all of my work for prior, I say prior to starting this work, was just the last part of my 7-step process. It was all about how to improve business, how to be more efficient in business. But uh, so I wanted to come in with this overlay, and so even if you don't do business, I wanted to be able to elevate and introduce again the language of the soul, the language of the heart. to inform individuals that no matter where you are on your life's journey, if you haven't connected, because the ideal is to live a life of at least contentment, but ultimately you want to live a life of purpose, joy. And so you can't get there if you're dealing with you know just ongoing challenges, deep mental uh, uh, depressions. So the most direct way and the most um, I would say the most logical way of making that pivot is to again connecting with the soul. And again, no matter what your spiritual background is, most spiritual platforms, religions, uh, advocate and teaches that the soul is our best guide. The soul is our best guide. So to the degree that we can get in touch with our soul, our inner self, will determine our outcomes. So yeah, this is not this could work for anyone. You didn't have to be uh, the sacred patrons I target are between the ages of 35 and 55, but then there's always outliers. I've worked with individuals much younger than 35. I've worked with individuals older than 55. So, um, and again, it doesn't have to be about uh, starting a business. I remember when I first did this, I was working with a VP of a bank, and I remember he came to tears because he said he had never thought of a life outside of the banking industry, and he said I struck a chord, and he wanted to be able to use his what he called his gift of logic to be able to help people with their individual lives, like a life coach. So yeah, it doesn't have to be all about business.
I had a question when I was reading the book and doing the exercises. If this is not something you can answer, please say so. But I'm very curious because I've noticed in me, and I doubt I'm unique in this way, that there is a part of me, and I would say some of us, when we encounter something like your book that gives prompts to stop reading, think about a question that's answered, write down the answers. There's a resistor in there somewhere. There's some part of us that's like, I don't want to do that. And I'm just curious if you're familiar with that and where you think that might come from, because to really, at least for me, in these types of things, getting quiet and then quiet enough to hear the voice that's really going to provide the answers to these questions, and being able to discern that from the monkey mind just trying to jump in and fill the silence. So I'm just curious if you've also noticed this, and if you have any thoughts about why we might have to talk some part of ourselves into going ahead and going through this kind of work.
Well, so I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from individuals doing the exercise in the book, but before I wrote the book, when I was doing this like sort of in a live session, I did have I would pass around papers to say a group of 25, 30 people. Uh, Two things, Ken, and I talk about my archetypes, but I interviewed a quantum physicist on this platform when we first started, Dr. Amit Goswami. I think you've interviewed him as well. And
Yes, we
he,
have.
he talks about archetypes as well. And he talks about archetypes for the sake of life purpose. The archetypes he talks about, he says fear is a very real archetype. Love is a very real archetype. So in answer to your question, the resistance that you're referring to is that change infers, what change to some people change is very scary. It brings about a discomfort. Um, so and again, it's for me, it's because you're not clear on who you are. But once you're clear on who you are, that goes away. But so an individual that's a little reluctant to do the exercises, it's probably all about that. And I'm gonna elaborate a little bit more on this change and fear of change. Uh, if you've been successful in one venue and you've gotten comfortable with that, your soul may be, and chapter two is all about turning challenges into, breakthroughs. Your soul might be asking you to step up to the plate because the world needs someone like you who it knows you are. Uh, but if you're comfortable doing what you've been doing for the last 20 years, that's not an easy task to say, okay, I'm just going to pivot and let everything I've built my life and my success on, I'm going to let it go. I get that. I mean, when I left the world of IT, there was some resistance, a lot of resistance there. You know, fortunately, as I began to align with who I was, the contract I told you about, because I didn't know I would be teaching entrepreneurship, and I certainly didn't know I'd be teaching heart centered entrepreneurship. But when the state of Texas saw what the success we were having in our business and they asked us to teach what we had been doing, that was the universe saying, Henry, it's time to, step out of just managing an IT business and start talking about the concepts of business, and not just the concepts of business, but these heart centered concepts of business.
With us, but we talked about change and uncertainty. So what we're talking about now goes to those things. And I think it would be great to kind of wrap up with that. But Alexandra, if you want to unmute and join us.
Yes, hello. I wanted to share this because when I found out about this book, it was in the middle of March, and I felt like it was just, I meant to receive it at that moment because I was in a period of uncertainty, and I had received a job offer from someone without even looking for the job. And when I saw this book, I thought maybe this is my path to something else, something new. But I started reading it and I put it down because I thought, let me integrate myself with this new journey for the first, 60 days. And then of course I picked up the book again. I'm on chapter 2. And sure enough, within the last 2 weeks, that awareness that's mentioned in chapter 1, when you become aware and how things come to you naturally, like Henry was saying, where the soul is kind of asking for permission to kind of help you elevate yourself so that you can move together. So it was like, I see my path going in a different direction that I wasn't expecting. And so right away last week, I reached out to the school. So instead of doing my master's in accounting, I may be doing it in consciousness and physics. And
Okay.
apart from that, then it kind of led into this book that I want to write. So I started creating the framework these last 2 weeks,
Awesome.
which has to do with something that I can do for the world. And it's like, oh my goodness, everything is just going to another direction versus accounting, now into consciousness and physics. So I
That's remarkable. That's
yeah,
awesome.
and I know it's because of this book, and I'm so grateful what Henry put together because as I'm reading, because I'm also the type of person where I may read, so it might not be that we're being resistant, but it might be like, okay, let me absorb this information so you can kind of take it in and then go to the next. And then when you continue, you're like, oh, because that's what happened to me when I put it down and then I picked it up again. And of course, because I really wanted to think about some of the examples that Henry gives us, where he's thinking about those thoughts that are things when he was for like his son giving me that hot cocoa.
Yes.
And it made me think about things that I did as a child and was like, wow, why did I stop doing that? Which sometimes there are things that we stop doing as we grow old, maybe because we're in a different environment, things change or whatnot. And so I've been going back to some of those things that were like major highlights for me. And it's interesting where that seed of manifestation, I could see where it was, but it was just planted. And now, 50 years later, it's like it's blossoming. And I don't think that that's bad. The soul obviously knows when we're ready, but it's there, it's being nourished while it's waiting to grow. And I'm just excited. I can't wait to finish the book. But I wanted to make that comment because of what you mentioned about the resistance. So maybe it's not resistance. Maybe it's just like Henry said, maybe our soul knows when's the right time, and us being able to assimilate what we're grasping from the material. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. That was beautiful and uh, beautifully timed, and it's delightful. I'm sure it is for you, Henry, especially to see your work carrying over to someone. To my knowledge, you guys don't know each other.
To hear Alexandra say that, I mean, Alexandra has a beautiful soul. So, Alexandra, I'm just gonna full disclosure. When I knew she was an accountant, and I'm like, okay, well, at least we have an ethical accountant out there. But to hear her say she's looking to transform into works of consciousness, that's music to my soul because
Yeah.
I know her potential, and uh, and I know that whoever she's been working for over the years, she's been providing them an excellent service and making sure that their judiciary uh, tasks were being handled properly. But I know that she could serve in a much larger capacity. That I know. So,
Yeah, that's great. So this I think maybe we can round this out here, and then we'll see if there's other things you want to share we may not have touched on, Henry. But any um, endeavor like this is a way of um, working along your spiritual path or journey. This is just one avenue up the mountain to follow this particular roadmap that you've helped create and guide with Henry. But they all have things in common. And that fear that we've talked about, I think, comes from and is at least related to our somewhat of our human nature not being comfortable with uncertainty. And I think that's a lot of what we see in the world today. But we are, when we see uncertainty for what it truly is, one, it is really the nature of everything because the things that we think are certain, that's a way that we can comfort ourselves. But in reality, nothing is certain the way that we perceive it. And when we can surrender to that a bit and realize that part of the reason uncertainty is so disquieting is because we tend to focus on the the negative possibilities without recognizing that in moments of true uncertainty, every possibility exists equally if it's truly uncertain. And so we can retrain and quiet our minds a bit in that regard. But I think also what your work and any work diving into the wisdom would do um, would really be to help point out that we get attached to our identities, beliefs, and values. And I think Alexandra gave great examples of how an identity as an accountant is now beginning to get thinner and thinner, and that veil is separating to be able to see something beyond that. But that's a process, and it can't necessarily it comes in the at the pace and in the magnitudes that I think each of us can handle individually. Because if it's all at once, I think I know I would have had my mind blown if I was to have everything I've learned in the last 7, 8 years happen all at once back then. Yeah, I'd be drooling in a corner if I was lucky. So I just want to put that out there because I think that is also underpins a lot of what people will experience if they really dive into your book and dive into your work. That's going to be a part of it. And it's nothing to be afraid of, but recognize that that is going to be part of what happens.
yeah. So, Ken, I want to hit on a point you said about identity. So, the times calls on identity constructs. Uh, During the agricultural age, we know everybody had work that centered around the agricultural industry. Then we moved into the industrial age. We went through the yeah, the industrial age, the information age, the communication age, and we're on the outskirts of that right now. So these not only do we chart our own identities through life, but uh, the world we live in, the economy, if you will, society creates these identities and say, even even when we're trying to pick a career, a major in college, it's all based on the sort of the age that we're in. And so I would argue that right now, as the age, the communications age is shifting, and we're moving into a different age. And I quite frankly, I want to tag it the age of consciousness. Now, consciousness, everything starts from consciousness, so there will still be, uh, you know, enterprise businesses and everything, but uh, the whole concept of AI itself speaks to consciousness. And, it behooves us to get ahead of AI, or stay ahead of AI. I'm sorry, not get ahead, stay ahead of AI by elevating our own consciousness, even if it means shifting our identities, shifting what our roles are. Um, some roles are going to go away. I was on a call not long ago, and this guy was talking to a room full of attorneys, and he was talking to them about how AI is going to cause a lot of their work to go away, as far as writing contracts and stuff, and that's just one. I mean, there's a litany of it, but it's someone was joking that the plumber is going to be safer than some of the service based professionals. But having said that, the times is what the times are calling, the age is calling, and I think we have to be conscious and move with the age. So that's where some of that uncertainty comes from. Is that we're at the changing of an age. When people remember the blacksmiths, when we were going from the agriculture age to the industrial age, uh, the blacksmiths were wondering, what are we going to do with all this equipment? What are we going to do with all these horses and all the things that I'm so sorry, when the automobile was coming into the mainstream. What are we going to do with all these horses and all this stuff we've invested in the horse industry? And horses became something else. Horses became uh, part of games, racing industry. Horses became something more of a aesthetics, show horses. But I remember my grandfather had mules and stuff in the field, but all that went away when the automobile came, when the horseless carriage came. All of the So now someone said, guess who are the horses right now? And this is not a slight, is that with AI emerging more rapidly, some of the tasks and roles we've had are shifting. And now we have to learn to shift with that, because a lot of things are automated. I'm just, as a technical person, I'm just blown away at some of the things AI is able to do now, and it's displacing a lot of people. But that shouldn't create fear. That should summon the deepest part of who we are. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, because I want to get people to thinking about the deepest part of who we are. And I guarantee you that always that will always outlast any new innovations. If it's coming from the soul, it will outlast any new innovation, because we will be guiding it from the soul with the ages. So
Yeah,
that's what.
this doesn't feel coincidental. I think the
Right.
timing of this presentation, your work I'm referring to, with the era you just uh, beautifully articulated, it's time that maybe lends itself to even in some ways more easily be able to take that into reflection and find those individual true passions, and then find our sacred patrons to work with. So, Henry, I want to thank you for the evening. I want to make sure, is there anything else you want to cover, or would you like to share anything else about how people can work with you? And we can certainly, if you'll make sure I have those, we'll include those in the program description once it's up on YouTube.
Well, Ken, you can always go to assurecoaching.online. That's my website. Uh, what I will do is get from you the list of individuals that signed up, whether they attended or not, and I will send out an offer for them to engage with me through. I'll make I mentioned this to you the other day. I will offer the assessment at a reduced rate to to the ones that signed up, and yeah. So, but other than that, get the book, and again, you could. There's a soft copy that's $19, and then there's the so you could for $20 you can connect with me and engage with the work, and if it resonates with you, take the next step, take the assessment, and if you want to go beyond that, like I said, I'm gonna be kicking off uh, the Find Your Aha Moment cohort in the 1st of August. So I'm gonna send out an email to the individuals that signed up to mention that. So those are the ways that you can stay in touch and connect.
And the book's available on Amazon, uh, anywhere else, or is it primarily for sale on Amazon only?
Books by Amazon and Books by. Well, if you go to my my website, you'll see all that on there. So
Okay. All right. Well, again, I want to thank everyone that joined us this day for the live program, and for those who have the benefit of seeing this on YouTube in the future. I'm sure they'll get quite a bit out of it. Henry, it's so fun and such an honor to be able to reconnect and have you back as a guest now on this thing that you started, that I was the very grateful and lucky recipient of, to carry on with it. So thanks again, everyone, and we wish you happy 4th of July to those of you in the United States, and wish everyone very well for their futures and finding their true selves and their true callings.
thanks, Ken, for having me back. So and thanks for everyone who attended. You could be watching the World Cup right now, but I thank you for joining us tonight.
All right. Thanks very much.